I've just finished dry aging a pork shoulder so we can answer the question, how does the Lone Star Grill's adjustable charcoal grill perform as a vertical smoker? It's difficult to put this grill in a definition or any traditional definition, in part because it is so versatile. I've already done tests exploring its direct cooker capabilities, as well as offset smokers where I've done some chicken halves along with brisket, ribs, and sausage, and been blown away by the results. And today, I hope that holds true and the trend continues for Miss Tootsie's pork steaks that we'll be doing a little bit later on. And last but not least on my list that came up in comments, by the way, let me know if there's anything else you want to see down in the comments below, and I will add that to future videos, which is, James, how does the charcoal basket work for set it and forget it fire management, as this promises up to 12 hours of burn time? So stay tuned for a future video. Now, about that pork shoulder that I've dry aged for today's pork steaks. If you live in my neighborhood, you already know what's up. You're greeted with the glorious smell of post oak and smoke. But I'm gonna come back to why I've already got a live fire burning down some post oak into some cooking embers in my Lone Star Grill's adjustable 48-inch charcoal grill. That is an important step, but one we'll pick up after we've got our pork shoulder converted into pork steaks. So let's go over to the kitchen and we're gonna break this down as well as season it up. And when we come back over here, I'll fill you in on the important step as why the first order of business today was getting a fire going with some real post oak splits. On a fresh pork shoulder, we can normally get about 3 steaks before we run into the bone. You can see here, as part of the dry aging process, things do shrink a little bit. So we'll see how far we get before the bone becomes a bit of a problem. I'm gonna start by tracing out roughly about 2 inches for our steaks. That's looking good. Let's keep working here. So we did run into a problem a little bit earlier than expected with the dry aging process shrinking our pork shoulder. I was only able to remove 1 steak before coming into contact with the bones. I continued to trace out the steaks, and while unfortunately I don't have a bandsaw to solve this issue, I did grow up in the Tim the Toolman era, and Mama didn't raise no quitter. Okay, I've taken these inside and washed and rinsed them to make sure that there is no bone dust or any residue like that left on our pork steaks. So I was able to get 3 full 2-inch steaks and 2 smaller ones. So I've set the smaller ones aside. I'm gonna save those for another day and just cook these 3 incredible looking pork steaks. I'm gonna keep seasoning incredibly simple. So let's come nice and close and we'll get some fresh cracked pepper ground up using my pepper cannon, as well as Lowry's for our seasoning salt. And then the game plan here, I'm not gonna go for the full overnight dry brine. I was blown away when I did this with steak, so my hope here is the same with pork steaks, is that we're gonna get a lot of flavor from the aging process itself and don't need to rely on leaving these in the refrigerator overnight. But I am gonna give them an hour or an hour and a half or so while our fire burns down to coals that we can cook with, which will give plenty of time for our rub to adhere. Okay, our pork steaks are in the refrigerator. They're gonna hang out there, as I mentioned, for about an hour. I already added a couple more wood splits so we get a good size live fire post oak coal bed to cook with, but I just took a quick peek and we still need to wait a little bit longer for those flames to die down so that we aren't getting too much direct heat. That's one of the things I've fallen in love with my Lone Star Grill's adjustable charcoal grill. I mentioned, if you didn't see the intro video, it's sort of 3 things combined into one. I've already done a few videos trying it as an offset smoker since it has 2 independent fire boxes. You of course can do some direct heat cooking using the adjustable charcoal grate to raise or lower your fire, which is perfect for searing and or doing things like chicken thighs. And today I'm gonna go for something I haven't tried yet, which is using that upper rack as a vertical smoker. And there's a couple different styles you can do pork steaks. There's no wrong answers, but I'm definitely gonna pick one methodology for today's cook. Someone like my friend Steve Gow from Smoke Trails Barbecue, who I joined his competition barbecue team at Memphis in May. On his video, he cooks pork steaks a lot like you would cook a steak, into about 135, 140 degrees Fahrenheit. My friend Cooper from Bar A Barbecue, he uses his M&M rotisserie like an offset and is smoking these up to about 185 degrees Fahrenheit. But I'm gonna go for my personal favorite, which I think is absolutely awesome on any pork steak that I've had, which is the Hill Country approach of cooking directly over the coals. Bradley from Chud's Barbecue, he mentioned that he designed his Chud Box in order to gain sort of 16 to 18 inches clearance from the grate to the coal bed. And when I measured this in my Lone Star Grill's adjustable charcoal grill, I can go all the way up to about 22 and a half if I put the grid in the low position and use the upper rack. So I think this is gonna allow me to cook directly over the coals using a post oak that we have burned down into a coal bed and get some amazing results. I'm also gonna stick pretty true to Miss Tootsie's method from Snow's Barbecue, which is only turning our pork steaks once. We're gonna cook them also into about 185, 190 degrees internal doneness to make sure that they're done. And we're also going to use exactly no modifications here, Miss Tootsie's mop recipe. So now that you're all caught up on the plan, let's take a look at our fire. I think it should be just about perfect where we want it. We can install a meter probe just so that we keep track of our fire if we need to add any extra wood splits. And then I'll take you back over to the kitchen and we'll get working on prepping Miss Tootsie's mop sauce, because after about an hour or so, that's when we want to start applying our mop. Okay, let's make Miss Tootsie's mop sauce. I'm gonna get started. I do a little bit differently than what she outlines in Texas Monthly by melting the butter and the onion along with the mustard powder first before adding the water, bringing that up to the boil and adding everything else. So let's get started first with a little heat for our butter. Next, we can break down one white onion. I've again modified this recipe to be something that'll be plenty for our 3-part pork steaks versus starting with a gallon of water, which is what's in Miss Tootsie's recipe. But we're just gonna do a coarse chop on our onion. Add in our mustard powder while the onions are simmering in the butter. Quarter cup of wash our sister sauce, as they call it in Texas. Recipes for white vinegar, but I realized this morning I'm out, so I'm using apple cider vinegar as the substitute, half cup. And now I can add in our 6 cups of water and bring that to a boil for 10 minutes. Okay, the meter has us cruising along about 167 on one and 173 degrees on the other, but now is the time I want to start applying our mop. I've not yet flipped these. They are looking awesome. Let's get our mop sauce. We can leave our sauce there to stay warm, let those keep cooking. So what did you miss? Well, I continued to mop our pork steaks with Miss Tootsie's mop sauce about every 30 minutes. And the total cook here, once I started mopping, was an additional 3 hours until we reached around 185-ish degrees. I'll put the picture of the ChefsTemp X10 up on screen, what I captured right before I pulled these off for a rest. I'll get you back to the action in just a minute, but first, a big thanks to ChefsTemp for sponsoring today's video. I love grilling and smoking, but sometimes I'd actually rather be spending my time with friends, family, and or enjoying those tailgate festivities versus tending to the needs of my smoker, which is why earlier this year, a much colder James showed you how I upgraded something like my Weber Smoky Mountain to go from analog to completely hands-free and digital, and saved hundreds in the process. The ProTemp S1 is the heart of the ChefsTemp Smart Grill system. It isn't just a large digital display for your analog smoker. If you want to, when paired with the optional Brizo fan and the wireless information being sent from up to 4 independent probes, it can completely take over fire management responsibilities, allowing you to upgrade almost any analog grill or smoker into a fully integrated smart barbecue system. I became a ChefsTemp customer a few years ago when I was testing instant read thermometers and discovered the X10 that you regularly see me use in videos, and I fell in love with its performance, quality, and most importantly, value. Speaking of value, in addition to the X10, all the products that I showed you today, including the ProTemp S1, are eligible for my save up to 25% discount code. All the details are down in the description for you to check out after today's video. Thanks again to ChefsTemp for sponsoring today's video. Now, back to the action. For my rest, I'm gonna go for a bit of a hybrid approach using what Cooper from Barry Barbecue does, where he douses his pork steaks with a lot of butter. Instead, I'm just gonna use a little bit of clarified butter. Costco sells these marketed as ghee, clarified butter. This serves a great purpose. Best practice, if you're resting beef, you could use some beef tallow, which is why I like to make my own and just drizzle a little bit of that over a brisket before I rest it. And clarified ghee is the same magic for pork. It just makes an incredible flavored, juicy result, and some of that absorbs back in to whatever it is that we smoked. So I put that inside of my Drip Easy blanket and just let that hang out on the counter for about 90 minutes is my game plan before we're ready for dinner. I can hold this anywhere from 2 to 3 hours and still be above food safe temperature, but 90 minutes is when dinner is, and when I'll rejoin you over in the kitchen for the taste test. But before we jump into the taste test, let me share some thoughts of how cooking in a vertical configuration has gone. We've done charcoal grilling and we've done offset smoking, so going for vertical smoking with the hill country style of cooking directly over the coals. Today is the first, and while it went really well, naturally there are a couple things that I like to improve, which is how do we maintain our coal bed for our entire cook. Now, this is something that I've experienced on smaller cookers, including Kamado style grills where I cook with a live fire. The same challenges of lack of real estate when you shrink down to just one of our fireboxes and we're cooking directly above that, you run into some of the same challenges, which is the coals that we started with by burning down our post oak splits. Those don't last the 3 hours that we need to maintain heat. So instead I was feeding some small splits, but small splits again increase the flame. So I was just trying to manage that. I thought about maybe using an external charcoal chimney or one of the other fireboxes, but I'm gonna do some tinkering, just again, how to keep feeding real wood coals. It'd be easy if we were to switch to charcoal, but keeping the real wood fire going without getting the flames too high that it starts to impact the bottom of whatever we're cooking. I think we avoided all crises issues, something we'll find out in a few minutes time when we get into the taste test. By the way, let me know if there's anything else that you'd like to see cooked on the Lone Star Grill's adjustable charcoal grill. I picked up from my offset smoke video, a bunch of you also want to see starting with a wood fire and then transitioning to charcoal and let it go overnight. So that is next on the list. But if there's anything else that you'd like to see, by all means, let me know. I do check out the comments, and if I can fit it in to an upcoming video, I'll be absolutely sure to do that. So I've got nothing to do for the next 90 minutes. So I'll rejoin you when it's time to slice into our pork steaks and see how our dry aged, Miss Tootsie Mopped, direct heat cooked, that's a mouthful, pork steaks turned out. See you soon. Okay, our rest is complete. I ended up pushing actually just beyond the 2-hour mark. A little nervous about that, seeing as, well, according to my X10, we're sitting around 68 degrees outside. A little bit cool as the sun is starting to dip. So hopefully we are still above 140 degrees Fahrenheit or thereabout internal temperature. Let's open these up, take a look. They certainly look good. Ooh, just below 138, 140. You know, we are right on the line. I don't want to go any further than that. Definitely would maybe add this into the tub like I've done for taking food to a competition or a friend's house. We are right on the line. So 2 hours is as far as I would go with the holding blanket, but let's get these out and ready to slice up. Okay, here we have our pork steak. I took the other two inside. The family is starting to slice those up. As I mentioned, we did end up running a little bit long for the plan for dinner, but let's get a couple slices here. Good smoke, plenty of juice, rendered fat, squishy right there. You just see that's a ton of juice. That's looking good. Let's keep slicing this up. All right, dry aged pork steaks cooked directly over the coals. There's a lot going on. Let's dive in, see how we did. Cheers. Wow. I can already tell there's so much going on here without the having a control as part of this experiment. I'm not gonna be able to give you a lot of how it compares, since I realized halfway through today's test, maybe a controlled pork steak would have been a good idea to appreciate the dry age. So we'll have to save that for another day. But I can absolutely tell you the flavor of cooking directly over the coals is coming through in spades. I'm going in for another bite. No sauce, nothing. This is just magic. Wow. That is incredible. incredible. The fat inside completely rendered like butter. And like the dry aged steaks where I did have a two side by side to do a comparison, the porkiness, if that's a word, of these dry aged steaks is unlike anything I've ever had before. So definitely let me know if you do want to see a proper head to head. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and call this 2 thumbs up. That's it for today. I'm James from Soak That Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up. Wow.